Hello everyone and welcome to the best channel that you'll unsubscribe from today, where we have a new dev insight usually towards the end of a season. We start to get insight into the next season, exotic buffs, nerfs, ability changes, weapons, blah, 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 blah. And today we're looking at exotic armor and abilities. Exotic armor, we basically have not really heard anything. And Bungie is going to be buffing up some underused exotics. And then in the ability section, we have heard a couple of things, specifically targeting Strand and Suspend. But otherwise, let's just see what we're working with here. Knucklehead Radar. The functionality of the Foe Tracer exotic helmet has been completely removed from that exotic and added to Knucklehead Radar on top of its existing benefits. So now you get Knucklehead Radar and Foe Tracer in the same exotic. Okay. I mean, it's definitely a buff to Knucklehead Radar, and it's one that makes sense, like flavor-wise and thematically. Do I think it's really gonna push the needle on Knucklehead Radar? Probably not, but I guess it's something. Foe Tracer. All right, what did they do to Foe Tracer? We took some cues from Monochromatic Maestro, artifact perk from a couple seasons ago, 1 season ago, 2 seasons ago. When you deal damage with one of your abilities, you gain a damage bonus with weapons that have damage types matching your subclass damage type. Additionally, when you defeat an enemy you've damaged with one of your abilities, either with another ability or a weapon with the same damage type, you will spawn one of the collectible objects associated with your subclass, such as ionic traces or fire sprites. Okay. This is certainly a bit more enticing. I think the damage bonus, it's going to depend on like how much of a damage bonus we're talking about. We're talking like 10%, we're talking 20%. How long of a duration are we talking here? But, you know, I feel like someone out there is going to come up with something to use with Foe Tracer, specifically because of the collectible objects. You know, there's a lot of hunter setups that have a lot of ability killing. You have, I mean, Arc Hunter right now with just like punching everything is very, very strong. You have Caliban's Hand with just throwing knives everywhere and explosions. So there's definitely a lot of potential, and I'm sure there's going to be some sort of internal cooldown. So we need to know what the internal cooldown of spawning one of these objects is before we can really say, you know, is it 5 seconds? Is it 10 seconds? Got to wait for those numbers. Need some more numbers, but some potential here. Absolutely some potential. It's not very flashy, but it could make some things pretty interesting. Okay, Lucky Raspberry. So this is where when you hit a target with an arc bolt grenade, you get some energy back, and there's a chance you can be fully refunded. A little too unreliable in its current form. Okay, so they're streamlining energy gains while leaving some of its benefits intact. Still expands on the chaining capabilities of arc bolt nades, but now instead of basing the energy gains on those chains, each time you damage an enemy with the lightning strikes from the jolted condition, so like just nothing to do with arc bolt technically, as well as each time you pick up an ionic trace, you gain additional grenade energy. So they're really pushing into jolt here, which is pretty cool because, like, I mean, jolt is, I know it got nerfed a little bit recently, but it's still absolutely very, very good to be using. We've also given this grenade the intrinsic ability to stun overload champions. You don't have to jolt them and then trigger the jolt. You can just throw the grenade at an overload and you stun the overload. Okay, that's pretty nice. I will say that it might be a little tough to do that because of, you know, how teleporty happy overload champions are. You might just end up throwing your grenade and it teleports out of the way, but it's certainly something. Okay, I'm pretty interested in that. You might give Arc, you know, a little bit of a different play style, even though right now, I mean, Arc Hunter is like, Arc Hunters are speed running Grandmaster Nightfalls by themselves. They're doing solo speed run GMs. That's how strong something like Assassin's Cowl melee Arc Hunter is. Do I think this will eclipse that? Probably not. I mean, it would take a lot to completely dethrone that kind of damage output, but at least it's something different. And Renewal Grasp, oh boy, we've undone the previous nerf to Dustfield grenade cooldowns when using this exotic. There you go, Renewal Grasp Hunters, you finally got another bone thrown your way. All right. Titans, Icefall Mantle, Doomfang Pauldron, Path of Burning Steps, and Eternal Warrior. Season 21 included some changes to Eternal Warrior and Path of Burning Steps. We've added an escalating damage bonus to arc and solar weapons, respectively. Yep. That happened. So basically, you can replace your surge mods by using one of these exotics. We like that this gave players another way to get surge-like bonuses, but the Eternal Warrior seemed to have the most reliable way to get up to a tier 4 damage bonus. We made some further changes to these perks to make them a little more reliable while also expanding the functionality to 2 other exotics. Okay, so Doomfang feels like it's going to be Void, Icefall Mantle, Stasis. So these are just getting the Eternal Warrior treatment where you now have another exotic that you can use instead of using surge mods in case you want to do something like that. I assume Doomfang and Icefall Mantle will also retain their current abilities. They didn't say anything about getting rid of them. So, okay. I mean, I previously thought that Eternal Warrior, it was a nice buff and I tested it out. But to me, using surge mods is like not really that big of a deal, at least to me anyway, and I'd rather use my exotic slot on something that's going to give me some kind of an effect versus just giving me back a thing that I already had, because the place where surge mods are, which is your feet, they don't really have too many other mods in that slot where I am like desperate to use those mods. So I don't know if this is really going to push the envelope for either one of these. I mean, Doomfangs are already kind of okay. Icefall, I know, not really that popular. So maybe it might give Icefall a little bit of a boost, maybe Doomfang a little bit of a boost. But knowing what it did for Eternal Warrior and Path of Burning Steps and how little I've really seen them out in the wild, I'm not the most optimistic that all of a sudden they're going to be meta. But I've been proven wrong before. Okay, ACD 0 Feedback Fence. This exotic got a complete mechanical rework. Now ties into the armor charge system, increasing its versatility, making it more useful in scenarios where you might not be taking a lot of melee damage. Okay, I've always really considered ACD 0 Feedback Fence more of a PvP exotic, just kind of based on how it works and based how historically bad it's been in PvE. I haven't tested it any time recently. But the last time I did, it was pathetic, really bad in PvE. So interested to see what happens here with the new perk, which completely replaces the old. When melee hits give you an armor charge. When melee hits give you an armor charge. Maybe it's where melee hits give you an armor charge. You take reduced melee damage while you have that armor charge. Taking melee damage causes you to emit a burst of damaging arc energy that jolts targets. Okay, I'm back. Consuming your armor charge and dealing more damage based on the number of stacks consumed. Note that the damage dealt by the burst of arc energy should be comparable to its current damage for 0 to 3 stacks of armor charge. Okay, so that doesn't really inspire me. But again, I haven't really tested ACD 0 Feedback Fence in PvE lately. So hearing that the damage is going to be the same, like in my mind, is just like, cool. So like nothing. The jolt is absolutely a much needed buff for PvE. PvP, I mean, I guess it's like when melee hits give you an armor charge, where melee hits give you an armor charge now. Because like PvP, I don't feel like armor charge is around nearly as much as it is in PvE. So I'd say to be determined. Is it going to replace something like, point contact? I've been having a lot of fun with point contact this season ever since they buffed it. It's more defensive focused. And right now, where we are as strong as we are, I don't really know if there's that much of a place for defensive-minded exotics. You really need to be like the best of the best kind of defensive exotic to really get any sort of attention. And with Titan, pretty offensively focused. on Arc there. So I think still to be determined on that. Okay, next up, Hallowfire Heart. Interested. This exotic often stands in the shadow of the more ubiquitous Heart of Inmost Light. Very true. As soon as Heart of Inmost Light really kind of got rolling, Hallowfire Heart literally just did not have a place in the game anymore. And even with Heart of Inmost Light's nerfs that it got, it is still a very good exotic. So what do we got? To remedy that, we've removed its base energy to solar abilities and replaced it with a perk that will let you build more into sunspots. Okay, I'm back. I'm back in, baby. We think you'll be seeing more sunspots on the battlefield as a result. As for the perk that greatly increases your ability regeneration rate when your super is fully charged, we left that as is. A very good move there. Okay, I am interested here. I mean, Solar Titan, you know, you think of Solar Titan, you think of sunspots, you think of Roaring Flames. You very, very rarely use the melee ability, Consecration. It's a very cool ability. And yes, you can build into it, but most players are going to take the easy route, and that is just Sunspots, Soul Invictus, and Roaring Flames. It's just so easy. I mean, it's literally the reason, part of the reason that Solar Titans are like one of the best solo dungeon setups in the entire game. Like, you're unkillable, you're dealing massive amounts of damage, you're doing it all with your abilities. So I think I'm more excited for this because now I can maybe build into Consecration and not feel dumb about it. Like being able to have sunspots through an exotic and then going into Roaring Flames to boost up Consecration. I'm interested. I'm definitely interested. There's a decent chance that Season 22 has some solar seasonal artifact mods as well. So I think there's a good amount of potential here. Definitely a good amount of potential for Titans. Warlocks. Okay, Astrocyte Verse, the Blink Helmet. We've added 2 more pieces of functionality to this exotic. When you blink, the enemies near you when you reappear will be volatile. You can then leap away, triggering a series of explosions when you fire upon them. That is how volatile works. Additionally, when you're using the Nova Warp super, Nova Warp is a different super for Void, in case you didn't know that, because almost nobody uses it. The Dark Blink ability no longer consumes super energy. Okay, this has got some decent effects in it. I think really the biggest holdup is just like using Blink in PvE. It's not really that common, and having to blink basically into enemies to make them volatile can be pretty risky. You basically have to blink, make them volatile, and then get the hell out in order to really maximize that. So some potential there, some flashy move potential there, definitely. I do like also that they added some functionality to Nova Warp. Maybe actually someone will use Nova Warp out there. It's also a very good thing for PvP users, being able to have a much longer super. No longer consuming your super energy, and also being able to, like, this is going to be an interesting swap exotic in just like regular PvP. So, okay, you know, it's definitely a nice little boost to Astrocyte Verse. How much it's going to get used, I mean, it's a lot to invest into to just be able to make some enemies volatile when, you know, we get a volatile thing every year or so. Okay. I'm not wild about it, but it's certainly better than nothing. Geomax Stabilizers. We've often heard calls to restore the perk that let you top off your super energy by sprinting. The legacy of that incentive still creates some pretty silly gameplay patterns. Instead, we wanted to give players a way to get more super energy, no matter how charged your super is. Picking up an Ionic Trace while wearing this exotic will give additional super energy. I mean, Arc Warlocks do be making a lot of Ionic Traces. They are capable of making so many Ionic Traces. I mean, go look at my Cold Heart build. Obviously depends on how much super energy are we talking here. But Arc Warlocks are already quite adept at generating super energy. So I'm interested to see how often you'll be able to crank out a super wearing Geomags if you fully build in to making Ionic Traces, because they are very, very easy to make. Wings of Sacred Dawn, something that this is a 6-year-old exotic that basically nobody touched. It's like still one of the best looking exotics in the game. Basically nobody touches it. What have they done? Leaning into the orbital weapons platform fantasy, we wanted to help players have a way to stay aloft longer, especially in target-rich PvE environments. Typically, reloading was the main cause for a float to end. This exotic now automatically reloads solar weapons, including the weapon you're holding, from reserves each time you get a kill while aiming down sights. Try this one out with Xenophage. Okay. I know Wings of Sacred Dawn has gotten buffs before, and yes, having to reload sometimes made you fall back to the ground. You have to jump right back up. I mean, Wings of Sacred Dawn is like never really something that was going to be super strong in high-end PvE because you die really fast in high-end PvE, and putting yourself up in the sky where there's literally no cover is usually a great way to get killed immediately. And this change is not really going to change that, but I don't think it was really meant to. It's used for the situations where Wings of Sacred Dawn can actually excel, which is just kind of like a more low, mid-tier kind of a choice if you do end up using that. It's a neat function. I think Heat Rises has kind of like replaced Wings of Sacred Dawn. Like, why am I investing fully into Wings of Sacred Dawn when I can just like consume one of my grenades and it's all good? You can just float around as much as you want. So it's certainly a buff. I don't think it's going to move the needle that much. You know, try this one out with Xenophage. Sure, you can just stay floating in the air, killing things with Xenophage. It's a neat thing. Personally, it's not something I'm super interested in. So this seems like a very targeted, like, if you really like using Wings of Sacred Dawn, we are going to make it easier for you to stay in the air and keep using Wings of Sacred Dawn. So Wings of Sacred Dawn users, enjoy. Everybody else, I think this is going to be pretty much a non-factor and or a very, very niche thing. I'll wait for like some super high-end PvE player to be like, using Wings of Sacred Dawn, you can now solo all raid bosses, just some like whatever crazy stuff they come up with. Winter's Guile. Due to the nature of the Stasis Warlock's melee ability, this was previously a disappointing choice for that subclass. We've added a new perk. When you're using Stasis, combatants encased by your Penumbral Blast melee will automatically shatter after a short delay. So you put it out, and then they just auto-explode. Which is, you know, it's a neat functionality, but is it going to get me to really use Winter's Guile? Off the top of my head, no. Again, I'm sure someone's going to come up with something a little interesting. Winter's Guile, by the way, the exotic that makes it so whenever you get a melee kill, your melee damage is boosted. A lot of those exotics kind of got nerfed a little while ago to prevent some of these absolutely crazy damage numbers from going out and like stacking all of these things. When Winter's Guile wasn't as popular compared to Worm God Caress, because Titan could just do some crazy stuff, but it still got caught up in the crossfire. It's a cool effect. I don't know if I'm fully locking onto it, though, over something like Osmiomancy, for example. Osmiomancy is just so good. Okay, so those are all of your exotics. Those are all your exotics. We are going into abilities now. We have Barricade, Striker Titan, talking about Suspend, and Strand Fragment Suite. So let's go to Barricade. A decent amount of these looking like PvP-based nerfs or buffs. Starting with Barricade. Potent tool for closing off lanes, bunkering under fire, creating safe spaces, blah, blah, blah. The prevalence of barricades in PvP can slow down the pace of play in a manner that doesn't have much in the way of meaningful counterplay. We've been experimenting with opt-in ways to play around barricades, including anti-barrier rounds from the exotic or from the artifact or exotic weapons, origin trait, subclass buff, still not really coming into play. Still not really doing a whole lot, so they're taking another hit to it. Towering Barricade base cooldown increased from 48 to 70 seconds. Does not, nothing is messing with the Bastion variant. Already has a base cooldown time of 100 seconds. However, the maximum health reduction does apply. Maximum health reduced from 600 to 500. Damage resistance versus PvE combatants increased to compensate, so it should hopefully have no effect in PvE, at least the health stuff. So bringing its effective HP, the Bastion variant, from 500 to 417. Players deal an additional 20% damage to Bastion barricades, a change we introduced in a patch a long time ago. So yeah, as a Titan in PvP, barricades do be pretty strong, and just like regular play, you drop a barricade, I'm pretty much gonna completely disengage in combat with you unless we're like literally right next to each other and there's some sort of like, no, you go first, no, you go first, no, you hang up kind of situation where we're like trying to juke each other with shotguns. So maybe more PvP Titans can kind of chime in here, but this does not feel like it comes completely out of left field. I haven't done trials in quite a long time, but I imagine, I've definitely been in situations where someone drops a wall, they're trying to get a res, we got two people, it's like spam fire the thing and you can get down a barricade. But yeah, in like a 1v1 situation, best of luck with that, unless you're burning a bunch of special ammo to do it. So to me, from the outside looking in, I understand. But I would maybe talk to your local PvP expert to get some more intel on how truly effective this will or maybe will not be. Striker Titan. Okay, Striker Titan is one thing that I know a lot of people are very, very annoyed with because of how strong they are. High-level PvP, trials, comp, regular Crucible playlist. Probably won't surprise you to hear that Striker has been significantly overperforming in high-level PvP activities like trials. Small portion of this is due to, all the Arc seasonal artifact perks. Understandable. Their base kit has a few elements that are true strong. Made some changes to both of these, but neither their prevalence nor performance has been meaningfully shifted, so we're taking another swing at Thunder Crash and Knockout. Theoretically, Thunder Crash is a one-off super, but in practice, its kill potential is closer to that of a roaming super, so we're updating its base cooldown to reflect that. If someone could let blueberries that play against me in PvP know that, that'd be great, because currently, they use it as a one-off super against me every single time. Let's let the people know about that change. As damage dealt and received is the primary factor in super generation rates, particularly in PvE, we'll believe this change will be most strongly felt in low player count PvP like Trials and Competitive without being too disruptive for our PvE strikers, which is very understandable. Increased base cooldown time from 500 to 556, very specific, seconds, matching the majority of our roaming super roster. So Thunder Crash is definitely a tough to use super. If you want to do it as a roaming super, you got to have a really good grasp on how to actually hit people but keep moving in your Thunder Crash, which I do consider a pretty high skill, or high tier skill to have. It's not something that I feel like is the norm for sure. But people who do know how to really make that work and make that happen can easily abuse how good it can be just zooming around at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And yeah, again, Arc Titans do be pretty strong. Knockout, I know a lot of people are going to be happy about this. Reduced damage bonus versus players from 50 to 30. Knockout, just lets you just absolutely clean up. You just clean up so easily. The range is great. It's so ridiculous. And this is coming from a Titan who doesn't really PvP that much. The amount of times that I've said in the middle of a PvP match, oh my God, that was so unfair, is every other kill that I get with a melee. It's crazy. It is really crazy. I'm going to take off my headset because I don't need them. So yeah, totally understand this. I get it. It's pretty annoying. It's really strong, especially in 1v1 scenarios. It's so good. Strand. So Bungie has talked about the fact that they are going to be nerfing Suspend. And there's a reason that I've been basically glued to my Strand Titan for the past 2 seasons. Suspend, Bungie literally says it, is currently a skeleton key that solves combat problems against all combatant types. Basically everything, not including bosses or targets that cannot be suspended. Its current duration heavily steps on the toes of Stasis Freeze, which we want to keep as the highest potency disable in the sandbox. The uptime of suspending atoms doesn't allow for meaningful player decision-making when choosing when and where to place a hard disable. So yeah, so basically they're saying It literally solves all problems, and it's active enough that you can just keep flinging it out. You can literally just toss it at everything, and you never have to actually think about the combat scenario that you're in, because it's often so much that you can just use it whenever you want. It doesn't matter, and Bungie wants you to have to make those decisions in the middle of gameplay, which I totally understand, because it makes for a more interesting combat gameplay cycle. So we're making a suite of changes to Suspend. Let's just go down the list here. Suspend. Reduced base suspend duration versus non-champion PvE combatants from 8 to 5 seconds. I originally thought, like, if they were going to be really brutal, it would go from 8 to 4. So it's 5 seconds. Thread of Continuity now extends this duration to 7 seconds, down from 12. So it's only a 2-second boost versus a 4-second boost, something I also kind of anticipating, or was going to anticipate was going to happen. Reduced, this is something I was not expecting. Reduced base suspend duration versus champions from 8 down to 3 seconds, 4 seconds with Thread of Continuity. So you can no longer just suspend a champion forever and or chain suspend a champion forever and just absolutely go to town on them. Now this is much more of a, you use it as a way to just quickly crowd control a champion and get the hell out of there, or you use it as a way to set up a burst window. So you're like, okay, I'm going to suspend now, and then everybody just dumps all their damage on the champion. That's how I figure a lot of people are going to be using it now. Increased snap damage dealt to suspended boss combatants by 67%. Okay. Threat of Mind. This was another contributing factor to a lot of these infinite suspend. Reduced class energy gain based on the tier of the defeated target. Minor combatants reduced from 15 to 10. Majors reduced from 25 to 15. Bosses, champions, and mini bosses reduced from 50% to 25. Yeah, Threat of Mind was also a rather significant factor in this, as is Threat of Generation, which we'll talk about in a second. Titans and Hunters live through their class abilities. Titans have Obey and Leap as well to really bolster their ability to suspend targets with their class ability. Hunters with their Dive Bomb. People are usually stacking that with Sixth Coyote, which is something I still recommend. I know Sixth Coyote is very, very boring, but it allows for just way more, many more activations of your Dive Bomb ability to suspend targets. And reducing this is also going to cut back on how spammy a lot of it can be. Hunters are still going to have many charges to do those suspensions, but it's no longer going to be a thing where you can suspend a target for 12 seconds. It comes down, suspended again. Like, as Hunter, you could suspend a target for a minute straight. A minute straight if you really wanted to. So I understand that. Threat of Generation is basically an auto-include in every sort of Strand setup. It's just so good. It works passively. Grenade energy is some of the best energy that you can possibly get. Reduce the overall energy gain per damage event against PvE enemies by about 20%. That's actually less than I was anticipating. Rebalance the energy gain multiplier across primary weapon archetypes. We wanted to bring the energy gains for dealing damage with precision weapons and fully automatic weapons closer together. So fully automatic have more opportunities to kind of trigger Threat of Generation from to proc. Another reason why Quicksilver Storm is so good. Never leaves my kit. You're constantly hitting those procs for Threat of Generation. Overall, we've reduced the efficiency of fully automatic primary weapons and increased the efficiency of precision primary weapons to compensate. So instead of fully automatics, like constantly triggering Threat of Generation and like hand cannons or scouts only doing it every time they shoot, now it's a bit closer together. Totally understand that. Totally makes sense. In combination with these changes to Suspend, we want to shift some of that potency to other Strand stuff, like Threadlings. Increase Threadling damage in versus PvE combatants by 30%. Love that. Threadlings definitely needed some kind of a boost. I think they probably could have even used more. Tangles. Reduce Tangle creation cooldown time from 15 to 12 seconds. Love that. You get 5 every minute, or you can make up to 5 every minute as opposed to 4. Sever. PvE combatants now affected by Sever have their outgoing damage reduced by 40% instead of 30%. I think Sever is probably like one of the most underutilized things in the game right now. Being able to reduce the damage that PvE combatants do is pretty significant, and it's hopefully going to make up, like this change specifically is hopefully going to make up for the lack of crowd control. People are going to rely maybe a bit more on Sever to make some of these more lethal targets much less lethal. I mean, we're talking a 40% damage reduction for a little while. That's pretty good. The only time I was ever really using Sever on my Titan was just if I already had Woven Mail, and so I just ran up and meleeed. But Hunters, with the buff that that your melee got, being able to generate more energy from that should be a bit more of an important part of your kit now. So that's pretty good. Hopefully Sever's going to get a little more love, because Sever is incredibly good, but I feel like it was just outshined by Suspend so much, because it's like, why would I need to reduce the outgoing damage of a PvE combatant by 30% when I can reduce it by, 100%. So totally understand that. But I mean, you can't suspend a boss. That's all I'm saying. Taking this opportunity to address feedback on a handful of Strand abilities and aspects. Silk Strike, bit unforgiving in the live game, particularly in PvP. That's news to me. I feel like I'm getting absolutely annihilated by Silk Strike. Okay, so increased damage resistance from 40 to 45%. Okay, I thought, I initially read that as increasing the damage. I was like, are you kidding me? The damage is already insane. What are you doing? Okay, damage resistance, that I totally understand. That I totally get. They are a little bit vulnerable. Reduce the suppression time between Silk Strike super air attacks. Okay. Reduced vertical lift provided by Silk Strike heavy air attack to reduce instances of missing the primary target. I don't know what it is about Silk Strike and like the big AoE, but every time I want to use it, I want to jump. I want to do like a little jump and then go whoosh. And every single time it would just give me a little extra air and you would just miss everything. But there's just something about it where I'm just like, you know what I need to do before I do this? Jump. And every single time I'm just like, don't jump. Stop jumping. So I'm actually irrationally happy about this change because it's going to make me miss way fewer heavy attacks. Thread Runner. Okay, Threaded Spectre is performing in PvP, needs a little bit more in PvE. I totally agree with that. I was not really impressed with Threaded Spectre. Lifetime is going up to 12 seconds, up from 10. Increased health versus PvE combatants. It takes longer to detect by PvE combatants at the beginning of its lifetime. They now more consistently focus on the Threaded Spectre, and allied targets no longer have reticle magnetism toward the Threaded Spectre. Oh my god, I'm so sorry if that was annoying people. Not that Threaded Spectre was really out in PvE that much. Okay, a little more interested in how Threaded Spectre is going to perform now. I think the bonus health was kind of the thing that I was looking forward to the most out of this, but we need to see how much health it's really going to get. But yeah, Threaded Spectre, definitely weak. Definitely weak. I was not impressed with it. The Wanderer. I know a lot of people are super not stoked about the Wanderer as it is right now. I am not as down on it as I feel like the rest of the community is, but it's still getting some kind of a buff. Somewhat hard to use in more difficult situations, making it dangerous to leave the safety of cover to grab a tangle. While this aspect is equipped, destroying a tangle with your weapon will now weave the Wanderer, which surges upwards and detonates, suspending any nearby enemies. That basically sounds like they turned the Season 20 artifact perk into, like, it's now built into this aspect. Destroying a tangle now creates a delayed suspending detonation. That's pretty good. Increased suspend detonation radius from 6 to 7 meters against PvE combatants. That's pretty good. Increased thrown Wanderer Tangle detonation damage to match standard Tangle detonations. This seems pretty good. I know Suspend is getting nerfed. But at least now you don't have to always worry about trying to get out to a tangle. That seems pretty good to me. We'll see how it plays, but yeah, that's nice. That's very nice. Grapple. Grapple melee always takes priority while active, regardless of whether or not a target is within range. Praise Oh my God, love that. The amount of times I think we've all used grapple and then only to think that we're going to use our grapple punch and then it uses something completely different. Great change. Then there's some shifts in a lot of these fragments. Threat of propagation now gives some strength. Continuity no longer gives strength. That was always something that confused me. I was like, we have continuity, which is like a really, really good buff, and it's also giving us like stats. Like, to me, it never made sense that it did. I guess Bungie is like, oh yeah, I guess that doesn't really make sense, does it? Threat of wisdom no longer requires a precision kill to activate. Okay. Threat of isolation, reduce the number. I'll bring these up in case people don't know what these actually mean. Wisdom is defeating suspended targets with precision final blows creates an orb of power. You no longer need to be precision killing, which is good because sometimes hitting the head of a suspended target can be pretty annoying. Isolation currently does landing rapid precision hits emits a severing burst from the target. Reduce the number of precision hits required to activate by an average of about 30%. I could see isolation getting a bit more love when combined with this sever buff that we just got. It's no longer as tough to activate, and it's even stronger. Something to think about. Rebirth. The number of threadlings created of the number of created threadlings now increases based on the tier of the defeated target. Minors are 1, elites are 2, boss champions, mini bosses are 3. Those are your big changes. Some more changes too. We don't know what those are just yet. We'll find out in a couple of weeks. Tune in on launch day for a full list of changes and bug fixes, including a fix for Celestial Fire's Scorch not activating melee perks like Sunbracers. I have seen this complaint so many times. It's been like this has apparently been a bug for like a year or longer. I don't know what took so long. Maybe it was harder to fix than Bungie thought. I don't know what the problem was, but point is, Solar Warlocks, celebrate. This is hopefully going to get fixed properly. It's not going to be an issue anymore. That'd be nice. Otherwise, I don't think anything here really shocked me. Suspend, I mean, I've been saying for a while that I think Suspend's going to get nerfed. It's way too strong. Strand is literally in the game. It makes sense that Bungie wants, Stasis to have still some place to roam within the game, and reducing the potency of Suspend was definitely going to help with that. Knockout getting nerfed doesn't surprise me at all. This, I mean, it doesn't surprise me based on what they've described here. But again, I talked to your local PvP expert for a little more insight on that, but it seems to make sense. And then a lot of these exotics, I don't know if anything is all of a sudden going to become meta. I am most excited about Hallowfire Heart. Geomag stabilizers have a lot of potential. I'm very interested in Lucky Raspberry as well. Those are the ones that I'll be looking out for, and I'm sure I will do a video going over a lot of these changes in Season 22 after we kind of get rolling. But that is it for your breakdown here of all the stuff that is going on. Feel free to let me know how you're feeling about a bunch of stuff in the comments, and I am going to get out of here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.